Welcome to another winter workshop. And in this workshop, the workshop is hosted by me, Peep Laja, founder of Wynter, and Erik MacKinnon. Erik runs all things revenue at Wynter. And we are going to discuss what we learned and concluded from 3 research studies we ran. So we surveyed people using Wynter, using our own tool. We surveyed CMOs, CTOs, and CFOs of 50 million plus B2B SaaS companies. And what we wanted to find out was how they buy software and what all goes on before they make decisions. And so we're going to walk you through the findings, one nugget at a time. You might have seen some of these insights already on LinkedIn if you're following us. And we're going to try to bring it all into a full summary, a TLDR, along with our own personal takes on what to do about this stuff. Before we get started, Erik, anything else you wanted to add?
I'm the housekeeping guy, so just let everyone know that if you have questions that come up, please ask them in the chat or in the Q&A as we go, and we'll make sure that we get to them. We're also going to save some time at the end for questions as well. So we're not going to eat up the whole time. Pep and I just going through our slides. We'll have lots of time for Q&A to talk about what to actually do about the data that we've got here and how you can use it to accelerate sales in your own business, whether you're selling to one of these titles. It's exciting.
Okay. Yeah. So more or less 30 minutes of us going through the findings, and then we'll have up to 30 minutes to discuss. So anytime you have a question, just shoot it our way. All right. So let me try to share my slide deck here and get going. And maximize. Okay. We have slides. And can we make the slides bigger?
About as best we can do. We can knock us out of the view.
Okie dokie. All righty. So, first thing. So, how the vendor selection happens. And it's pretty much what you would expect. Like they start by first figuring out what is it that we need. What do we need? What problem needs to be solving? They create a short list of which companies to look into, to do some demos, to review what they learned, and procurement buy. So that's pretty much the flow. No surprises here. This is how most everyone buys software. And so having this bird's eye view in mind, let's zoom in here. So the first thing is how the shortlists are created. So if you've read the book How Brands Grow, about the concept of mental availability. So when people have a problem inside a company, they first create a short list. Which companies do I know that solve this problem for me or can deliver the outcome that I'm after? And so these are top of mind brands. So, mental availability means being thought of by category buyers in buying situations. So that's where they start, followed by peers. So what does peers mean? Like they text their friends, they have WhatsApp groups, they are members of various Slack groups, that kind of stuff. They ask, like, hey, what are you using for X? All right. And what's interesting is like 75% of people turn there first. Not Google. They don't go to G2. They ask their peers. And then they validate what they've learned through review sites. Then they go to Trust Radius. They go to G2 and etc. Or just Google the brand name and see what comes up. Many CMOs shared with us, they Google brand name sucks, either from Reddit or just Google, and try to see if there are any juicy bits about you. What I found personally interesting, Google search is still big. 50% of people start their brand research on Google, which, not surprising, but AI tools are catching up. When we did this survey in 2024, 0% were using LLMs for this. And now, almost 25%, a little bit more even. The interesting thing about this AI LLM thing is how they use the LLM. Basically, they want to map out the category. Hey, who are the major players in this category? Who are the tools that I should look into if they are unfamiliar with the category? And Reddit, the same thing. Like if you're looking for a SOC 2 provider, you go to like, hey, what are you guys using? And this LinkedIn thing there is they try to search through LinkedIn posts and looking for content, looking for organic content on when somebody's talked about a post. Hey, we're using this for that, and then it's kick ass or it sucks ass. One of those.
I think what's interesting about. Oh, go ahead. Yeah. I was just going to share the AI tools piece. I think what's really interesting there as well is in the last year, since we did this survey last year when it was 0% and now 25%, all of these providers, the major ones, OpenAI, Perplexity, and xAI with Grok, have all launched these deep research tools now, and Google as well. So, I did a post on LinkedIn about this a while ago where you just say, hey, you know what? I'm in the market for some market research. Here are my vendor list. Wynter, companies X, Y, and Z. Please go and answer these number of questions for me. So here are the things that are important in our buying process. Here's the 10 questions. And the agents will go out and just say, okay, let me get all this information for you, do all that information gathering piece. So even at the top, we see this all the time, like in CMO, Coffee Talk, and Pavilion. Who are you using for X? Who's your CRM provider? Who's your whatever, right? Ask your peers. You get a list of company names. And then you can take that list of company names from your trusted peers and do that next level of research with AI. So you don't even have to go through the Google piece anymore. Very interesting.
So if the number one thing where shortlisting of vendors happens is within peer networks, peer communities, like how do we use this insight to market better? Now, I hopped on a call with two community leaders who run communities for marketers. So I had Kathleen from Pavilion and Dave from Exit 5. And what I asked them, so if somebody wanted to shield their brand and get more mentions of word of mouth on those communities, Pavilion and Exit 5, it's like, how do you go about it? Because surely spamming people doesn't work. And the answer was absolutely, pushing your brand and being aggressive about it does not work. So really what it is that you want your customers to be your champions. So, and you yourself, you want to be present in discussion. So in ideal world, if you had nothing else to do, you could spend all your day chiming in on actual discussion threads about your category and be helpful without pitching. If somebody asks for recommendations for tools inside those categories, what you want to do is you want to know which of your customers are members of Pavilion, members of Exit 5, or name your community. It might be a community for CTOs. And then ask them, hey, there's this thread about blah, blah, blah. Could you please go and pitch us, essentially? Somebody else saying that, yes, these guys are good. And you can only pull this off if these are actually happy customers and you actually have a relationship with them. Erik, any other thoughts that come to mind about peer networks and how to use this nugget of information?
No, that's a big one. Just the fact that you have to be present in them, right? You or somebody from your company needs to obviously be a member so you can have alerts and awareness of when the discussion topic's happening about your category. And then, like Pep said, it comes off as disingenuous and it gets caught out right away if you're in there trying to show your own company. So just don't. You can just find customers to do that for you and make sure that, if you haven't already got a customer advisory board, then like Pep said, just form some relationships with your best customers who are in those communities, and then make sure that they're willing to pop in. I don't even think you need to tell them ahead of time. In my experience, you could say, hey, you know what? I know you're also a member of Pavilion. There's this really great thread here. I would love if you would go and share your experience with Wynter.
Absolutely. What I've also noticed that there's something like I'm a member of both Pavilion and Exit 5, and so there's when there are discussions about Wynter there, and whenever I've chimed in, it kind of kills the mood. Like people want to just talk about me behind my back without me being present in the discussion. So as a brand, I think you don't want to get involved unless like false information is maybe shared about you, and then everyone is like, hey, do what you will, but this is incorrect or things like that. All right, let's move on to the next slide here, next nugget. So this is the same stuff, but also we're adding CTOs here. So it's not much different, except the CTOs are much more heavy on Google search when they're using for tech solutions, cybersecurity or things like that. Dark social is a little bit less important, even though it is very, very important. And one thing we didn't mention in the previous slide is like the analyst research. So this becomes more prevalent for larger companies. We're talking 1,000, 10,000 plus employee companies making a major purchase, like $1 million a year purchase. Then they go to Gartner, they go to the Forrester analyst and ask them to map out pros and cons of different players and that kind of stuff. Obviously, if your thing is $29 a month or $1,000 a year, this does not apply. Brand fame. Let's talk about brand fame. So remember, when they're looking for a tool, they want, they're making a short list of brands to look into. And that initial short list is 5 to 8 tools that they're going to initial consideration set. And they're going to narrow it down because nobody wants to do 8 demos. So they're going to reduce the number of players, but they're going to start with a larger, even up to 10 companies they're going to look into. And this is not a fair world. The richer you are, the more richer you will get. So let's say if it's a CRM that you're buying, you're going to look into HubSpot and Salesforce. The category kings that are already rich and big, they're gonna be in all the consideration sets. And so if you're a smaller upstarts against big giants, well, tough luck, like the bigger companies are always going to win more often. What we did learn is that most CMOs, CTOs are open to smaller brands if this is not a mission critical tool, or if the purchase price, the annual price is under 20K, let's say. If it's like and especially if it's SMB focused, like who cares? Yeah, sure. For point solutions, they're open to lesser known brands. If it's something like mission critical, like CRM or like in health records, cybersecurity, the brand matters, and unknown vendors are not even considered.
Yeah, I think that was something that was really clear in the CTO data that we looked at, was that the brand reputation was really important, especially in areas like cybersecurity, as you mentioned. The knowing of the brand name was the size of the brand knowledge, or the size of the brand, was less important than the reputation of the brand. So if you're a smaller brand with great reputation in cybersecurity, you're punching well above your weight class when compared to some huge brand that doesn't have as good a reputation.
And so talking about brand recognition, so what this is again classic marketing theory that you might or might not know. Is like just the more category buyers that are aware of you, the better your chances of getting shortlisted. So if you are in a large category when there are like 20, 50, maybe 100 tools that do more or less the same thing, and you want to be in the first 8 to be shortlisted, like stage 1, they need to be aware that you exist. So if all of your marketing is performance ads, just click here and get a demo or download the thing or sign up. If all your marketing you're doing is just this direct response performance marketing, you're going to be in less consideration sets, because this is not ad based. This is brands that I know and brands that my friends use, right? So this is like brand awareness. And then when they're narrowing the list down, it's a play of brand preference. I prefer this brand. And again, the law of double jeopardy is like the bigger brands are more preferred. Like HubSpot is more preferred brand for CRMs versus the new cutting edge AI based CRM that there's many of those now, but like HubSpot will win by default still.
Absolutely. The only other point I wanted to add to what you're saying here is in my sales and marketing career, I've also discovered that the brand awareness piece is important for the referrals, even if they're not people that have used you before. And I saw this a lot in this role and in previous roles where people will recommend Wynter, not having used Wynter, right? So they're asked in CMO Coffee Talk, who do you know for message testing? Oh, I know Wynter. Have you used them? No, but I know of them. So now I'm in the short list because that person is brand aware of us and they were able to recommend our brand, not necessarily our product. Right? They know who we are, not necessarily the quality of the recommendation or how it's going to go. So really important to maintain that recency bias inside of your ICP with as many people as possible that could not only buy from you, but also refer you to other buyers, right? Stay that top of mind brand presence or however you want to refer to it so that your brand comes off the tongue as, who are 5 companies in cybersecurity for this? Oh, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You need to be one of those 5 or you're non-existent.
Yeah. So if you've read the book, The Long and Short of It, if you haven't, pick it up. Basically, how to balance brand marketing versus demand gen marketing, and like on average, they say 60-40 split is the best. I saw this study. I think it was a hockey stick study saying that marketing budget gets cut every year, and every year the thing that gets cut is brand marketing, and so every year the pipeline shrinks because you're not top of mind. You're only running direct response ads, and those only go so far. All right, let's move on to the next point. So importance of brand. So this is already mentioning. If it's core infrastructure, brand reputation is crucial. If it's a point solution, it's less important. So as a small startup, and if you want to get into big companies, being a point solution and lower cost, of course, is the easier way. So undercut the big brands by being cheaper, better in some way for a specific solution. And then over time, you get more mature, you build your brand, you can take bigger slice of the pie. Now let's look at this one. So this is vendor interactions. So vendor interactions, and what we mean by this one is that what all the CMO, the CTO, and so on do before they bought the brand. So basically, 100% of them went to the website and looked at the website, and not surprising, right? Of course, you're going to go check out the website. And when they go to the website, what do they do? What do they do is like they are looking for differentiators. They're asking like, why this, not that? Especially against category leaders. So if I'm looking for a CRM, I'm going to go to HubSpot and then some, 5 other CRM websites. And the only thing I'm looking for is why these other ones over HubSpot. Okay, HubSpot is maybe more expensive than others. And cost does matter, but it's not end all, right? And if your website talks about itself as if you are the only one doing what you're doing, like we are the CRM, it saves us data and it's AI, you're gonna lose. And you won't even find out because this does not show up in your marketing analytics. Data shows that they are shortlisting only three companies to get a demo with. Largest shortlist of 8 to 10 gets narrowed down to 3. And this is done before they talk to you. There's no email, there's no chat, no demo, nothing. They narrow it down mainly based on your website. And they're looking for only differentiators, nothing else. And second thing they're going to look at is they want to get a feel of what the tool is like, right? So maybe it's an interactive demo, and it's better if it's actually interactive, because a lot of these interactive demo tools are actually just slideshows. First click here and then click there. There's nothing interactive about it. So like sandboxes where people can log in. Obviously, if you have a freemium version, that's an easy way to go about it. But a lot of people are login averse, so anything you can make available pre-login. Although some companies are gating their demos and it's still working well. So you got to run your own experiments there. Also, about half the people, or just under half, will check out your company's social media channel, your LinkedIn page, maybe, as well as your blog if you have one. And the only thing they're looking for is this company alive? Like if you're HubSpot, sure, they know you're alive. They may be a shareholder. But if you're a smaller company, you're a 10 million a year company, they want to see is this company still around, because if they're going to commit to you, and it's maybe you're a piece of a critical thing like a CRM, they want to know that you're still in business. And this is superficial signals. Oh, they're posting daily, shit's going on. They like that. If you have an active founder on social, that's an asset. People interact with the founder. In the case of marketing, it's like close to 25%. Looking at executive or founder socials on LinkedIn, etc. And then trade shows. So there is an interesting discrepancy between CTOs and CMOs. Now, I have to point out about this. Met somebody at trade show. Trade shows are terrible for discovery, like making the target market find out about that we exist. There are much easier ways for people to find out that you exist. They ask their friends, Google LLMs, right? ChatGPT. They don't need to go to a conference to find out that you exist. However, when they do go there and they interact with you, and let's say it's a high quality interaction, they are much more likely now to shortlist you in the final 3.
I think that's a really important piece to just kind of hammer home there. Actually, there's a couple pieces on the slide I'd love to add to, but the CTO one specifically, the data that we looked at, only 6% of CTOs that we surveyed reported discovering vendors at trade shows. So they're not walking the trade show floor trying to find new vendors to solve problem X, Y, or Z. Maybe because they're not aware they have the problem yet, or that's just not what they're focused on. But as you can see, the number for CTOs is almost 50% or 60% that interact with vendors that they know of already at the exact same trade shows. So finding a new vendor, 6% reported that they do that. But interacting with vendors that are either on the short list or currently in their awareness pool, that is a 10x multiplier on it. So again, making sure that you're already present in their mind space before you meet them at that trade show that you're both going to be going at is very important. Also, I think the big piece here that I learned from looking at all this data on this particular topic with interactions is just the difference between ICPs. So if you look at the difference between CMOs and CTOs, there's a couple of places here that the bars are very far apart from the dark gray and black. For example, social media is not a place you're going to catch CTOs really looking around very deeply. Blogs, they're not reading them. Digital ads, they're not engaging with them, right? But they are very present in real life at trade shows where marketers aren't necessarily going to be. So it's important to know the very specifics of how your ICP buys and not just assume that, oh, they're an executive, here's the blanket approach that we can apply to them. This is not the case. And we see this with data across all the different ICPs that we work with as well. If you think about developers, right, they're very unlikely to interact with you at a trade show or on your social media or with your digital ads. However, they're a much higher likelihood of interacting with your GitHub. Right? If GitHub was on here for devs, this is going to be very, very high on the list. Or as Pep said, interactive tools in your website, your code base, your knowledge base. So that particular ICP, if you're selling to them, very different than if you're selling to a chief marketing officer or VP marketing. So be sure to know how your ICP interacts with specific vendors, because that's how they're going to interact with you.
And the ACV matters a great deal here. The CTOs also respond differently because a lot of tech tools can cost up to $1 million a year for a large company, right? So it's much bigger stakes. You want to, shake some hands first versus, marketing is less risk, less cost usually.
Mary asked a question in the chat about this particular slide, just about webinars.
Yeah.
And your thoughts here, just her question.
Yeah.
What about webinars?
Well, a couple of things, like we can see subscribe to vendors newsletter. So that's what you usually do with people who register for a webinar. So webinars don't replace interactive demos on your website because webinars are long, usually 30 to 60 minutes. Maybe they are scheduled. It's a hassle tool, and then you can't quickly find what you want. And if the webinar is a product pitch, very few people are going to be into it. So, but that's a regular marketing, lead. I wouldn't say lead nurturing, but like top of mind builder. Absolutely email is still there. Every executive reads their own email. So building email lists using webinars as a lead magnet, absolutely you should be doing that. But it's not a, end all thing. Other questions here. Dave said the 60-40 split. according to the long and short of it, they say 60% performance, 40% brand marketing, and there's some differences between markets. You can look it up online. Oxeli is asking, what would the list look like for service consulting companies? So this study was about how people buy SaaS. So we don't know about agencies, but like agencies, the market is even more fragmented in most, like, let's say, agency categories: SEO agencies, full service agencies, PPC agencies. There is no HubSpot or Salesforce that has, huge chunk of the market. Power Digital, I think, is like only 1,000-person marketing agency. Everybody else is like little guys. So the odds that people even know you are tiny.
Reputation is also critical. I come from an agency prior to working at Wynter, and without question, one of the challenges in agency life is that very few customers leave an agency super happy with everything. They're like, oh, wow, I'm so glad I left after my 12-month contract. I can't wait to recommend them to everybody I ever talk to. So maintaining your reputation as positive in the agency space is absolutely critical. And if you're underperforming, then you've already shot yourself in the foot with that.
So how do C-level executives like to buy? So, companies narrow down the list to 3 companies to get a demo with. Only 3. And by the way, they are very familiar with the vendor before scheduling this demos. They've gone through your website, maybe interacted with the demo. All kinds of due diligence happened already before. So they're not going like, so what do you guys do? And most people want a demo. So again, this is B2B SaaS environment. The deal sizes might be considerable. If anything is under $1,000, probably they don't want a demo. But here we're talking to 50 million plus SaaS company executives. So a lot of the shit they buy is like high ACV, 10, 20, 50, 100 K, 500K a year, and so on. So they have specific questions. They've done their own research using your website and peers and so on. They have specific questions, and they prefer to hear instant answers from a person. Self-service and all the other forms are much less preferred. So my main takeaway here is, like, even if you are product-led, like, do offer a way to schedule a demo and talk to a human. Even if you are, if an inbound lead comes in with specific questions, be ready to take their money. Erik, anything you want to add here?
Very rare to see an executive prefer to do anything over email or chat with rep. Keep that in mind. If your sales reps are trying to email their way to success, not going to happen. You see it a lot. You can see typical is very high gray bar there, and it's the other side trying to force the issue on the buyer. So keep in mind when you look at your own process, buyers want to have interactions with humans. That's what the data tells us, CTOs and CMOs at least.
Especially the higher the ACV, the more they want to talk to you.
Agreed.
So here we broke down, smaller companies and enterprise, and then of course there's a middle area. So smaller companies, less stakeholders, very logical, and usually the boss person just makes a call. Yep, I like this. We're going with this one. It's very fast. They might want to do a pilot before committing annual funds. Like let's just try this thing. So be ready to have a pilot option. So if the friction is just committing to a year, and I don't quite know how it works. If it's a bigger company that is buying, lots of stakeholders, like, can be very political. Depending on the ACV, the CFO or CEO get involved, and the procurement, of course, is thorough. And anything that is in between 500 and 10,000, so it's like a sliding scale here. That's same stuff basically. So what adds the most value to the buying process from the perspective of the buyer? And again, the same thing. The most valuable thing is the demo, the sales call, more than the website. So in this 0 to 10 scale, so it's like supplier's website is like 5 point something, and demo is like 8, right? So what they told us about the demo is like, classic sales. The actual personality of the salesperson matters a lot. The preparation they did matters a lot. And of course, everybody hates those qualification meetings. Like if they need to jump through hoops with a SDR who qualifies them, everybody hates that process. There are easier ways to qualify people than using SDRs for that. Many respondents pointed out, if people are evasive about pricing, even if you don't list pricing on your website, in a call, like when they ask how much, you need to say, not like, oh, let me ask you 77 more questions.
We could probably spend the entire session just talking about this one particular slide. I know there's a lot of marketers who have joined us today, and it's very important that you help to manage your relationship with your sales team when it comes to this, because you're responsible for generating pipeline. You're responsible for handing over qualified leads that turn, demos that turn into business. And that ball gets fumbled at that transaction point based on this slide quite a bit. So just take a lot of care with your process when it comes to this. Also, as Pep pointed out earlier, right? You come from, when you're in the shortlist process, you come from a pool of 8 to 10 vendors potentially down to 3 before you know it. And one of the best ways to not be that 3 that turns into 1 that signs the deal is to have some onerous, friction-filled, annoying sales process that causes the buyer to immediately say, I got 2 other options. Forget this. There's no way. If it's a chief technology officer and you put them on a call with a SDR who's going to run a really poor quality discovery because they have 900 other calls that day, like this, just fix that. That could be a lot better for you than trying to figure out if your brand and demand budget percentages are lining up this year. So yeah, that's an important slide. And again, it all comes down to knowing how your buyer wants to buy. Make sure you've got the data. You talk to those potential customers and find out what is it, the hoops that we're making you jump through, are they the same hoops you're willing to jump through?
Now, if you're selling into engineering organization or marketing organization, how involved are the CTOs and CMOs themselves? Actually, full ownership of the buying journey by the C-level person is rare. So when we say solo is like 13% here. So mostly it is the team that brings in, that shortlists a vendor, that does preliminary selection. So you got to know who is your champion for the tool. If it's a big enough tool, the CMO, CTO, they do need to sign off. They're going to do their own due diligence. They're going to be at your sales demo probably. But like the initial stages is done by somebody else. And it might be a team, but it's usually one person who is your champion. And ideally, you would know what is the title of that person if you want to go after these champions. It's probably a director level person. It has often been a junior level person. So, how we get into deals with Wynter, many times it's just there's a fan of, let's say, my content on LinkedIn. And then when the company wants to bring in, let's say, a market research tool or whatever, that this one fan who's maybe a specialist level, IC level person, just is a loud voice inside that marketing orgs. Marketing orgs are not very big, 5% of the workforce is companies, usually marketers. So for a 100-person company, it's like 5 marketers. So one person can be very loud in those organizations. So do not discount people with lesser seniority. And again, the financial threshold applies here, like this quote on the bottom right here: less than 5K a year, I never want to talk to you. And 50K, you better get your ass over here.
Yeah, I think also the type of solution, right? Like the importance of it, the importance of the bet to the organization in the chief's mind, and the size of the bet financially. Those two things, as you can see, there's an axis there, right? And they just form some area on that grid. And you've got to try and figure out where your position lies on that grid. You might be a lower price vendor in your space, but if it's some purchase of critical importance to the buyer, then you're going to move higher up the chain right away. So again, important to know your buyer and how they buy.
Already mentioned this briefly, but most people are quite familiar with your brand before the sales demo begins. So if you high plus moderate, we're getting well over 50% here. And so how do they learn about your tool? Again, your website, your interactive demos, maybe what peers say about you. So if you want to control what they think about you, your tool, and how it fits in, and the overall strategic narrative, this is all your marketing and reputation, actually, customer success stories that controls this. You cannot control the narrative about your business before the sales demo. So do not assume that sales controls the narrative. It's the true customers and your marketing that builds the perception of what you are and what you're for. And again, if on your website you do not control the narrative of why you over the alternative mainly being the status quo, the category king, the HubSpots of the world, if you don't talk about that, they're going to fill in the blanks. And if another competitor makes a clear, compelling case why us versus like you or HubSpot, those are more likely to win here. Let's talk about quickly the role of CFOs as well. So in larger deals, CFOs get involved. Doesn't matter if it's a marketing purchase, engineering purchase, sales, doesn't matter. So what you need to know is that every tool, every company has a financial threshold when the CFO gets involved. In smaller companies, it's as low as 10K, sometimes 20K, 50K, 100K, even $1 million like if it's a big enterprise, it can be $1 million. But you need to know what it is for your tool. If you're selling, when does CFO get involved? Is CFO involved in your decision, right? And if they are involved, there are certain things you need to know. Well, first of all, that they have the veto power. They have the veto power. 30% of CFOs say final decision is up to them, not the person wanting to buy you, but CFO has the final say. And 16% of CFOs run end-to-end procurement process for bigger deals. They're always consulted and so on and so forth. And so what do CFOs care about? So that's very important. They don't care about your features. Oh, this is the wrong slide. We can talk about this as well. What the CFOs care about is a total cost of ownership, ROI calculations. They are very skeptical of vendor-supplied ROI calculations. If you say, oh, here's our ROI calculator, or here's our whatever thing that shows that ROI is 6x, they are very skeptical of all of that. They want to come to their own conclusion. And so it's much, much better for you to supply the ingredients for their ROI calculations for the CFOs. And the CFOs, like what if it's a smaller company, they want immediate payback. And by immediate, I mean within 3 to 6 months. If it's a larger company, 10,000 plus person company, they're looking at 1-2 year horizons. Even if it's a brand marketing investment, here how CFOs feel about brand marketing and approving brand marketing expenses. They are not anti anything. They are pro, this makes financial sense, and anti, this is stupid, right? So you need to think like a CFO. CFO does everything by spreadsheets. Like, show me a spreadsheet math here, how this is going to make me more money. If you say we're going to replace headcount because like AI is now going to do this thing that humans used to do, is not true ROI. If I can't fire people, let people go. Now it's like, oh, I let 10 people go and now replacing them with this AI tool, right? Like now it's ROI. But if I'm keeping the people plus adding this, yeah.
Think about this slide as well. If you're a marketer, so we asked CFOs how they feel about this in the buying journey. But imagine you're a marketer trying to get your brand budget, and then look at this slide. 27%. Is your CFO in the 27% supportive of brand marketing? Because as Pat pointed out earlier, it's one of the first things to get cut in my experience, right? Marketing is always getting their brand budget trimmed. And this is partially why, right? CFOs just don't have a lot of trust about brand marketing. So something to warm them up with.
Before we go to a conclusion here and wrap it up, Dave has a question here. So SDRs do a qualification call and AEs do the demo. What are the specific ideas we have about removing SDRs? So how I would think about it, like, what is it that the SDR needs to know? Right? A lot of this you can this qualification you can do algorithmically. Signals, things we know about the company size, like their revenue, funding, things like that, things that you're interested in, and based on that you can qualify. And the AE, if unsure, can bring the price thing up, within the first 3 minutes, as opposed to sending a proposal later, so they wouldn't waste a lot of time. Well, Erik, you've managed SDRs and sales, and you still do. What's your take here?
Yeah, I mean, I can give a really quick answer here for you, Dave. So first of all, I highly doubt an SDR is going to do a really great discovery process and then transfer that discovery information to the account executive in an efficient way for the AE. So if you're talking about a buyer that you actually want to sell to, the AE needs to run discovery to make sure they're going to run this deal all the way through to score a touchdown. The second piece of it is sorting out what Pep pointed out, the difference between qualification of a potential buyer. Can this buyer buy our product or solution? And the discovery process. Is this the right fit? Who's going to be on the buying committee? Who do I have to sell to? Who's the final decision maker? Do they have BANT? What's their time frame? How long do I predict the sales cycle is going to be? What's the size of the deal? Can I expand inside the organization? Blah, blah, blah. Right? That's account executive work. So he asked a question. What specific ideas do you have for removing the SDRs and the friction without wasting the AE's time? Exactly what Pep said. If you can do a better job of qualification up front of your inbounds, so I'm assuming you're referring to them, of your inbound buyers, then you can pass qualified opportunities or qualified leads off to the AEs with great success, because those are going to be people that the AEs want to work with. And that's really easy to judge. Just ask the AEs, hey, of the 10 people you dealt with last week, who was good? 10. Okay, great. We nailed it. Who was good? 0. We got to fix that. So you're going to get somewhere in there, but your account executive should not view it as a waste of time to run discovery. Most important thing they're going to do to win the deal.
All right, and this is time for our presentation, and we can take your questions for the next 20 minutes or so. But to wrap up, then, what are the key things we learned here? Who recommends you is the most important stuff. So not just reviews, but who is recommending you, like peers, important peers. Your best marketing is word of mouth from happy customers. This was true 50 years ago, 100 years ago, still true today. Brand fame, brand size, mental availability makes you get into consideration such as shortlists, and physical availability, meaning that if they're looking for you or your products in your category, you need to show up. So this is Google search, SEO still matters. I guess PPC still matters. You gotta make sure you show up in LLMs. There's of course new data showing that the brand size correlates with how often LLMs recommend you. And review marketplaces, like G2 and Trust Radius, they play their own game, and like whether you want to dance to their music is up to you. However, the worst thing is, like, if a buyer looks for your reviews and they find none, that's a bad sign. Your website's still your most important salesperson, because whether you're gonna end up in the final 3 is largely dependent on your website, plus customer references. Only 3 companies get a demo, and if you're not shortlisted, you won't find out about it, right? Like, it's not in your marketing attribution. You got to do other type of research to find out how many consideration sets are you even a part of. So this is like brand health surveys, things like that. Just keep your official social blog channels active. Make sure you don't seem dead. Interactive demos and sandboxes, very good to have on your website. If you sell large ACV deals, trade shows still worth it probably. And know when do CFOs get involved, and whether your deal size is enough to summon the CFO. And if it is, you got to have the ingredients for the ROI calculations, because that total cost of ownership is the number one thing they care about. Yeah, awesome. So these are the conclusions from these studies. And if you have any follow-up questions, please type them in now. Otherwise, Erik, you want to comment on what actually is saying here? SDRs for inbound leads.
No, I mean it comes down to the company's sales process and how that have it set up. I think there's some companies that are embracing the full cycle account executive. There are others that don't see that as the right path forward. They really do want some intermediary in the mix to as a blocker. It just depends on the company's sales process. I think you have to figure out what your own buyer wants, though. Pat pointed out in a slide a few slides ago that the ultimate decision maker or the chief in our examples for the surveys that we did is rarely the person that's going to be like requesting the demo and wanting to sit with your account executive. There's going to be some team involved or some amount of delegation. And again, what you're selling and the size of it and the importance of the strategic bet for the organization in investing in your software is going to determine who it gets delegated to, right? If it's just some Byzantine thing that we need, we need Canva. Okay, great. Then whomever might just come and buy that from you, right? So if you have some, however, highly integrated tool, this is going to connect to our CRM and go over all of our data. There's privacy implications. There's cybersecurity implications. Okay, great. Then that might involve IT and a developer, an engineer, and someone who's high up in the CTO's org sitting in on this thing from the get-go. So you just have to find out how your buyers buy and then build the sales process around what they want, what's going to make it easiest for them to get their job done. Because they have a job when they come to request a demo. They're trying to accomplish something. You need to make it as easy as possible. And that might involve a quick filtration with an SDR. Maybe it helps them. Oh, good.
All right, let's
questions. Not the right fit.
Let's take the questions here. So 2 questions come in. So starting with Isaac. What are the highest leverage activities you would recommend a solo founder who is looking to go further up market? So superficially, knowing very little about like what stage are you in, how do you have revenue, are you growing, are your customers happy, all that stuff. Know that the more upmarket you go, the more attention these people need. Now, of course, usually the deal size also makes it worth it. Now, if your goal is to stay a solo founder, and I'm making an assumption that you're a team of one, maybe a solo founder with a team of 100, I don't know. You can clarify this, Isaac. But if you are a one-person company, there are limits to how many demos you can do per week without, ruining everything else. Like 5 demos a week, easy. 10 probably doable. More than that, you got to hire help. So founder, highest leverage activity, I think, is building a personal brand and influence in places where your customers hang out. So in B2B the case, LinkedIn seems obvious channel. YouTube is up and coming. Going to events and meeting people in person. Because if we talk about differentiation in B2B, there's almost none, right? Everybody has every feature usually. And so what really matters more is distinction, like this memories that we have associated with a brand. In B2C, they often use mascots. In B2B, often this distinct feature about a company is a person that works there, usually the founder. It can be somebody else, of course. So if they know you, they like you, they trust you, you have a much better chance of closing any deals. Erik, anything you want to add here?
No, I'm exactly with you on that. Building trust and authority wherever your buyers are. Highest leverage activity.
Absolutely. And content marketing, you can repurpose. You can build a flywheel that I record video content that goes on YouTube, extrapolate the text that goes on LinkedIn. Maybe it started out as a podcast, like the same thing can go into a lot of places. So there's a lot of leverage there. Chirac is asking, any learnings from previous Wynter studies who talk about who visits a SaaS website? Now, everybody visits a website who is interested in it, unless it's like random flyby traffic. Intentional traffic, people who are interested in the thing will visit. So we cannot say it's a user, the champion. So your website should be written for the champion, the person who brings you into a deal, for sure. So that's not the person who signs off. If you know that the champion is the director, the end user, write for them. The messaging should be for that person, not the economic buyer, definitely not the CFO. So how to know who is the the champion? Usually, when this is classic customer research, talk to your customers, know what is the title of the person that usually brings you in. It's never 100% the same, but you'd see a trend, a pattern. In our case, in Wynter, it tends to be somebody in the product marketing organization. Director of product marketing is very common, but it can be a VP product marketing, VP marketing. So we know like those three titles is like our champion in like 90% of cases. Any other questions? Well, looks like we're out of questions. Well, in that case, thank you very much, guys. We'll send you a written summary of everything we discussed here and the recording tomorrow or the next day. And that is it. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks a lot for joining, everyone. It's good to see you.
Peace out.